I'm joined with Jeremy Werner with the Illini Inquirer. Jeremy, thanks so much for being here today. But we have a lot to talk about, a lot on offense. We're going to see maybe a little bit of a quarterback competition going on. Bielema says he knows who the starting QB is. Who do you think we're going to see starting on Saturday against Wyoming?
Yeah, Bielema won't tell us, but I think every indication is it's Tommy DeVito. The Syracuse transfer was brought here to be the guy. He has a lot of experience. He was here all spring, got most of the first team reps. And from what I've heard, he's gotten most of the first team reps during the fall as well. So, Brett Bielema playing a little poker, hiding his cards close to his vest. But I think he said today even that Art Sikowski has handled this well, bringing in the transfer, and he just wants the best of what's for Illinois. And I just think Tommy DeVito just gives him a more dynamic quarterback. He's able to run the ball a little bit better, stronger arm than Art Sikowski. So, and he also just has a swagger to him that I think these players and coaches have really gravitated towards.
Who do you think we're going to see as a breakout player, maybe some breakout players this year?
I know he broke out last year, but I think Isaiah Williams has another level that he can get to, especially in a different offense. I thought, he should have been used more in Tony Peterson's offense, which is part of the why Tony Peterson is no longer the play caller. But you saw last year when we saw UTSA here, Zachary Franklin got the ball over and over and found a way to get the ball in space. I expect Isaiah Williams to get the ball, jet sweeps, handoffs, being in the slot, quick routes. I expect him to get the ball a lot. But also at wide receiver, Pat Bryant, a sophomore who played a lot last year, gives him a bigger body, physical, and also Brian Hightower, kind of a guy we forget about sometimes because 2020 had a good year, led the team with 3 touchdown receptions in that pandemic-shortened year, but he's about 6'4", 220 pounds, and he had a really strong camp. Another guy we forget about, Luke Ford, gets a lot of attention at tight end, but Tip Ryman, a former walk-on, they glow about. He's the same size, kind of looks similar in helmet and shoulder pads as Luke Ford. Big physical guy, can block, and they seem to think he's coming along as a receiver as well.
You mentioned Brian Hightower and a couple other guys that might be some breakout players, but who are some people you think maybe we're not talking about enough that maybe we should see, coming out of nowhere maybe?
I know we talk about him a lot, but Chase Brown do we talk about enough because he has a chance to do something very few people have done at Illinois. He ran for 1,000 yards last year, despite playing only 10 games, despite 3 of those games having 8 or fewer carries. So he had monster games, a couple 200-yard games, but there's only 2 running backs in Illinois history that have had 1,000-yard seasons back-to-back. And that's Jim Grabowski and Robert Holcomb. So these are 2 really good players. Like Mikel LaSure did not do that. Rashard Mendenhall did not do that. Chase Brown can do that. So I think we should talk about him. But I think offensive line is really important for this team. And getting Alex Palczewski back, to have him and Julian Pearl in the middle. But a kid like Alex Pihlstrom, who's not really a kid, he's about 23 years old, 5th year here, 6th year here, but he's a former walk-on playing center, which is a really important position in this offense. And that adding, guys like Isaiah Adams, Zy Chrysler, JUCOs, that was really important because that could have been the biggest unknown coming into this year with losing guys like Vadarian Lowe and Doug Kramer to the pros. Getting Palczewski back and getting those JUCOs in, likely to start at guard right away, could really help this offensive line at least maintain a high standard.
Definitely. And, we have a couple true freshmen that played last year. What do you think we're going to see this year? Do you think that there's going to be some true freshmen that get on the field?
The good part about the program now is, unlike 4 or 5 years ago under Lovie Smith, you're not going to count on a lot of freshmen. You have an older team. Part of that is the COVID rules. Part of that is the transfer portal. You don't need to rely on freshmen right away. But a local kid, Aiden Lawfrey, I think eventually will have a chance. It's going to be hard to get carries with Chase Brown and Josh McCray in his way. Reggie Love's a veteran. Chase Hayden's a veteran. But he just has a speed element they don't really have. I think Sean Miller, a highly ranked wide receiver who had a lot of Power 5 offers. He had a really good spring before suffering a collarbone injury, so he's a little limited coming into this fall. But wide receivers, we're talking about a lot of unknowns there. Sean Miller has a chance to make an impact. And then a kid who's kind of surprised is Henry Boyer. 6'6", 265 pounds. Some people think he could be a left tackle eventually, but he's really impressed the staff with his physicality. So I think eventually he might be able to get in the tight end rotation.
And talking about that rotation, we mentioned a couple guys that, are going to maybe be in that starting role, but who do you think are going to be some backups that are going to come in and maybe see some reps here?
I think it's always important to have depth of running back, and it's one position I think Illinois feels like it has great Big Ten championship worth depth at. So Chase Brown, you feel like can be a superstar. Josh McCray showed star potential last year, but I don't think we should forget about Reggie Love, who's a top 500 prospect coming out of Trinity Catholic with Isaiah Williams. I think he can eventually play a big role on this team. another kid, if Isaiah Williams is one of the most indispensable guys on the team, but if he got hurt, Cody Case is a sixth-year transfer out of South Dakota who's a slot receiver, has speed, has a lot of experience, has played some big-level games. He's played at Oklahoma, had some success against the Sooners when he played them. So he's another guy that could eventually make an impact, and I think Tip Ryman belongs in that conversation as well.
I mean, we've talked about Isaiah Williams a couple times, but I mean, what do you think he's going to kind of accomplish and do this season?
I just think he's the one guy outside of Chase Brown and Josh McCray, the one guy in the passing game that you know can be a next-level player. I think he's got a lot of similarities to Wan'Dale Robinson, who was really good at Nebraska, kind of this jack of all trades. You use him in different ways, undersized but electric, fast, quick, and you just put the ball in his hands in space, and he can make a play. Illinois just hasn't had enough of those guys on the perimeter, so I think it's important to feed him, and let him go to work. So you got to get him 8 to 10 touches a game, and they weren't able to do that last year. But he was the first year as a wide receiver. He was a quarterback. Now he's pretty comfortable in that role. He's really grown as a route runner and as a leader of this team. So I think he's got NFL potential, whether that's next year or the year after. But I think Isaiah Williams can be one of the more talented wide receivers that Illinois had in a while. And Mike Dudek was really the last high-impact slot guy they have. I think Isaiah Williams can put up similar numbers.
I know you mentioned it earlier. We have a whole new look to the offense with offensive coordinator Barry Lonnie Jr. So talk to me a little bit about what you think is going to be kind of that mentality and what you think you're going to see from this new Illinois offense this year.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I had Barry Lundy on my list of offensive coordinator candidates when Brett Bielema was first hired. I didn't have Tony Peterson, but because he had familiarity with Barry when his days at Arkansas, he was an assistant there for 5 years. So I wasn't surprised when Barry eventually came in here. But we saw it against UTSA. He's going to have a similar foundation of what Tony Peterson had of we're going to be physical, we're going to run the football, we're going to use 2 tight ends a lot. But he's just going to use the passing game in a lot different way because the running game was good enough to make a bowl game. The defense was good enough to make a bowl game. The passing game was atrocious, one of the worst in the entire country. You have to find a way to ignite that. So you're going to see more tempo. That doesn't always mean they're going to go as fast as possible because that's not always good for the defense, not always good for the offense. But there will be times where they speed things up. But the most important thing is I think they're going to get the ball out quickly. I think you're going to see the quarterback run a little bit more. But you're still going to see smash mouth football. So this kind of is a marriage of what Rod Smith was doing with a high-tempo spread offense and then what Tony Peterson was doing with this big physical kind of traditional offense. I think you're going to see a marriage of those two, and I think that's what football is today, whether it's the college level and you're seeing it a lot in the NFL level, with quarterbacks who are more mobile, getting the ball out more quickly, getting guys in space. So I think that's what you're going to see.
You mentioned a bowl game. Do you think Illinois will make a bowl game this year?
I think they have a really good chance. This could be a 5-win team. This could be a 4-win team if injuries don't happen. I also think this team can dream of a 7 or 8 win season if things go their way, because we saw last year the defense was good enough. The defense was good enough to win 8 or 9 games last year. The running game was good enough to win 8 or 9 games last year. They just could not complete the football and move the chains. So if the offense improves just slightly and the defense maintains its level, which is not a given, but I think they have the schedule with Chattanooga on the schedule, with Wyoming early, with a Virginia team that looks completely different with a new coaching staff and a lot of roster change. I think they have the schedule in the Big Ten West to be competitive week in and week out. They were 2 plays away, 2 first downs away of going 7-5 last year in his first year. So I think they're capable. It's not a given. I think the range of outcomes is probably between 4 and 7 wins, maybe 4 and 8 wins if you're really optimistic. But I think it's time for Illinois to take that step. Minnesota and Purdue can do it. I don't see why Illinois can't do it. It's an older team. Even though it's lost some key players, some experience, it is still an older team, and I think they have enough talent. They just might not have the depth of Wisconsin, Iowa, some of these other teams, so injuries are going to play an important factor in their season.
All right, Jeremy. Well, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.